Hello, everybody. This is Brian Lambert. Welcome to our session on AI Foundations, Unlocking AI, and the Basics of Enterprise AI. Today, we're going to dive into understanding the basics of how AI works inside your organization. We'll talk a lot about different functionalities, different decisions, different tactics, different approaches. And really, by the end of the session, Anudeep and I hope you'll have a solid grasp of the underlying principles and capabilities of AI as it rolls out inside your organization and throughout your enterprise. All right, let's get started. So when we talk about AI, the evolution has been a fascinating journey. AI, we have to remember, has actually been unfolding for decades, from its early conceptual origins to the powerful applications we see today that are transforming industries and our lives. We have to think about AI as a progression from early ideas of can machines think, and what is the possibility of leveraging technology to make our lives better. We also have to think about the impact that AI has today from that long history over time. So between that historical view of machine learning and deep learning and neuro-linguistic programming and so many other aspects of AI, including, yes, the math, we're going to unpack some core concepts that relate to us today as we enter this AI age, and how business strategists and technologists have to work together to think about how do we land AI in our enterprise? How do we need to think about it? Do we have to tackle machine learning? Do we need to understand and have a deep understanding of math and algorithms? What about neural networks? Do we need one of those? By the end, I hope you'll have a deeper appreciation for one, how transformative AI is, and two, why it's important and how it's shaping our world. So let's talk about how AI can unfold by understanding probably one of the most transformative events in recent years, the advent of generative AI. Before generative AI was the industrial age. Machine learning and AI was used to crunch numbers. It was rule-based. It was about statistical models and methods. It was designed to automate tasks, classify data, and optimize processes. It was about narrowing AI applications with deterministic outputs. In today's world, it's a post-chat GPT world. Generative AI is here. In November 2022, OpenAI launched ChatGPT, the official start of the AI age. What is generative AI? Well, it's about human augmentation. It's about machines and humans working together. This collective intelligence is built on generative models that are able to produce things, text, images, code, and more. It's based on something called a transformer architecture. That's what GPT stands for, generative pre-trained transformer. And that enables the contextual understanding of data and information. And this event that happened in November of 2022 really draws a distinction between the industrial age and the AI age. So we're almost 3 years into the AI age. And do you understand how AI works? Let's talk about that. It's really important to understand that AI really is built on the concept of leveraging data, and more importantly, getting every drop of value out of data that you can. Data is the foundation of AI. And I tell people, no data, no AI. We need to gather and prepare the right information to feed into our machine learning models. Once we have the data, we can use powerful algorithms to train those models, to recognize patterns and make predictions. We'll talk more about this concept of training models and all of the investments that have been happening to train models from companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and even Meta and Amazon. and Microsoft. They've put trillions of dollars into the concept of training a model with powerful algorithms. These trained models can then be used to generate insights and make decisions. And perhaps you've already started using it today with your Chat GPT or Claude or your Copilot. These aspects of generative AI help us solve complex problems in new and innovative ways. The process of data collection, model training, and decision making is at the heart of how AI works and powers its incredible capabilities. The advent of generative AI has really significantly shifted the skills required in any industry. I like to remember and think about November 22 as really this inflection point. Before, technology skills and quote unquote AI and data skills were all about curating data, using data for statistical analysis, algorithm development, and traditional machine learning models. In other words, high volumes of data and high volumes of transactional number crunching. In fact, even doing that in real time. In the post-generative AI era, it really emphasizes the skills of things like prompt engineering that didn't even exist before November 2022, really, in the mainstream collective understanding. And also the skills of collaboration and co-creation and AI security and testing and this thing called AI ethics and governance. This transition from a pre-generative AI to the post-generative AI era highlights the need for professionals to continuously upskill and adapt to the rapidly evolving technology landscape. So as you can see, it's less about the actual technology tool. I'm talking about the concepts of what these tools do today versus before. In the pre-generative AI era, you might use statistical analysis, you might use spreadsheets, or you might use, platforms and programs to do that analysis. You might deploy technologies to do real-time data streaming. You might have to organize the data in order to leverage it for things like reporting in a dashboard. In the generative AI, you're using that data in a completely different way. Sure, you still have dashboards, you still have the idea of analysis, but now with this generative component, the ability to ask a question and get something back out that adds value, that generative component is the key to the AI age. And unlocking it in an ethical way that protects you and the company is forefront in the mind of executives today. And that's why a lot of these skills are going to be required, and a lot of companies are going to develop new roles. One industry that has been massively impacted by generative AI is the healthcare industry. The rapid evolution of AI in healthcare, from automation to augmentation of humans, has been front and center. It's amazing to see the transformative shift as AI technology becomes increasingly integrated. We're seeing a rapid evolution, moving from AI being used for simple automation to now augmenting and enhancing the work of so many people in the healthcare profession. From telemedicine to AI-powered applications to even the ability to diagnose people based on their voice, their facial features, and what's happening with their face, to actually deploying telemedicine that helps doctors coach and have bedside manner. To thrive in this new AI-driven landscape, healthcare workers need to blend both the medicine part and the technology part in order to add value in this AI-enabled world. It's crucial that we balance this incredible potential of AI with the need to maintain that human element, the human expertise, and uphold ethical principles and foster trust between patients and the healthcare system. And that draws to an important distinction. I really want us to pause here and reflect on the ways in which we engage and interact with AI. And I want to draw a distinction that there's a difference between consumer AI and enterprise AI. Consumer AI was the first thing that rolled out, where companies like OpenAI with their Chat GPT application brought this power into your hands through your smartphone. That really was for you as an individual. And that consumer AI available to the public creates not just specific business solutions, but solutions to your individual productivity. In contrast, enterprise AI involves a custom AI solution that often really impacts a workflow or helps people work differently to address specific challenges and needs in a particular business. Enterprise AI is designed to provide a competitive advantage by digitizing and digitalizing and automating key processes, by helping organizations generate insights in real time or near real time so that the organization can drive efficiencies and productivity within it. The key difference is that in consumer AI, this power is generalized to the masses, while enterprise AI is highly customized and tailored to the requirements of the business. And this is important for us to remember as we think about all of the noise and all of the hype that's out there. This is the same thing, and I use this analogy a lot. The idea that Amazon targeted consumers with a completely different shopping experience. We used to go to retail and brick and mortar stores. Amazon revolutionized that with their consumer approach to really removing the middleman. That consumer AI and the application, putting the power in your hands to do the search, to pick a product, to look for the best price, putting that all in your hands was a consumer solution. But what's often lost in all that is the enterprise AI required to pull that off. And it's really important to realize that you as a worker, whether it's in manufacturing, retail, or healthcare, as you're going to see here in a minute, you as a worker have to live in both worlds. You'll see the power and this awesome power of consumer AI in your hand, and then you're going to go inside your organization and wonder where AI is. What's happening with AI? Who's doing AI? Are we doing AI at all in the enterprise? And that's an important distinction. So let's look at healthcare in that lens to think about how would AI impact both consumers and the enterprise. I'm going to focus a lot on the enterprise side because it's important to think about how these solutions impact you as a patient. And it's something that you can probably relate to in the experiences that you've had, in the work that you've done with, and an idea that you can get your records or you can make an appointment, or perhaps your doctor reaches out to you and maybe it's just a bot. AI is transforming the healthcare industry, and you're probably seeing it in diagnosis and surgery and personalized care. AI algorithms can analyze those images like your x-rays and your scans. And yes, that requires a lot of technology and a lot of different computing power and software and networking and all of these enterprise AI things that you don't necessarily see. And if you were to work in that healthcare environment, you would probably need to wrestle with some of these things as a quote unquote worker. Now, on the patient side, as a patient, you can see the benefits of these things, whether it's, personalized care where AI helps tailor the treatment, or perhaps one day you might have a robot that's actually operating on you. Actually, in the news just this month, AI rolled out a robot that does surgery in China. So China rolled out this robot that does surgery with AI. So these AI-powered innovations are revolutionizing the healthcare industry and leading to better patient outcomes. And that's pretty amazing. So how does all that work? As a patient, we can relate, but let's double click into the enterprise AI side. Let's look at that. Medical data can come from a variety of different sources: patient records, imaging scans, lab results, wearable devices. It's important to collect data from all these different sources to get a comprehensive view. Once we have the data, we need to clean it by removing any duplicates or irrelevant information like outdated records. Next, we need to carefully label that data, for example, clearly marking medical images as healthy or diseased. And finally, we have to ensure that patient privacy is anonymized, right? That private information or that data that's about you personally is scrubbed and removed, and those personal identifiers are removed so that it doesn't necessarily leak outside the organization. So there's an idea here of how do we protect the privacy of these patients. So when you think about that, when you think about building out enterprise AI to pull that off, what does that look like? How do you do that? Who is responsible? How does that work? When you think about data sources, where does it come from? Does it come from a computer that the office is using? Does it come from a personal device of the patient? Does it come from all the machines or the medical devices inside of the operating room or inside of the recovery room? There's so much data that can get generated. Then how do you clean it? How do you bring it in? How do you label it? For example, when you look at an X-ray, how does it get labeled as no disease versus disease? How does the imaging recognize that it's healthy? There's a lot of math, there's a lot of AI, and then there needs to be some quality there, right? So how do you make sure that you can trust the AI? And then how do you keep it private and secure? So the next step then becomes like, well, how would this work? How would the generative part work? We can use generative AI, such as a platform model, but many organizations are looking at and they're exploring the idea of training their own model. The idea of training a model is something that perhaps you've heard about. And you may not realize how much of an investment that took for companies like ChatGPT or OpenAI, Anthropic, companies like Meta and Microsoft and others to build these platform models. They had to spend at the time almost several $trillion to train these models that now we plug into. And you maybe have heard of a company called DeepSeek from China that did that a lot more inexpensively. But they trained the model. There's a lot to training a model. That's a very technical process. It takes a long time. I will just say that every word that you type has many different derivatives and what they call vectors. And there's so many different ways in which the math runs on every single word in a millisecond that it's mind-boggling. So the algorithms to pull this off are evolving. The machine learning models become an engine for decision making. Those machine learning models run on algorithms, and they actually become the foundation of a trained model. And again, a trained model could be ChatGPT. So when you have an algorithm on the data that you want to look at, you're going to look at this data set and you'll have to think about how do we split the data? How do we split it into maybe training data, validation data, and testing sets? This allows us to train the model and evaluate its performance and test it on unseen data. There's a lot of work to do that. After that initial training, if you are training a model, you'll need to go through an iterative process of refining the model. And this likely involves training and training again with humans. Obviously, the computer or the algorithm and the system can learn itself, and actually you can deploy AI to help reinforcement learning and reward the learning that's happening. There's a lot of math and a lot of technology to train that model, and that repeated training and the evaluation of performance helps identify improvement. Finally, the validation step is crucial to ensure the model is performing well and to make any necessary adjustments before deploying it. Once machine learning is deployed, AI models can be used for decision-making and predictions in a healthcare setting. Internally, engineers may use models like natural language processing, or they may use the data they generate to prompt foundation models. To do that, they feed new patient data like symptoms and lab results into the trained model. The model then analyzes this input data and compares it to the patterns that it has learned. For example, matching an MRI to known cancer patterns. Based on this analysis, the AI generates predictions like risk scores, diagnosis probabilities, or recommended treatments. Finally, healthcare providers review this AI generated prediction set to ensure they make sense in the clinical context and to make sure that they're accurate before they act on them. This key step, this human in the loop, is critical to ensure that AI's outputs are accurate and appropriate for each patient. So when you think about this idea of training the model and making predictions and guiding decisions, it's critical to think about all these steps. Again, I'm talking about this in the context of training a model. What you do when you use a platform model off the shelf is you're benefiting from them training the model. And that generative ability of leveraging their trained model, you can deploy in your own daily life. And also organizations are learning how to bring that generative AI inside their organization so that they do not have to train the model, so that they can leverage these platform models without having to spend the millions of dollars or the trillions of dollars to pull that off. So you can think of generative AI as a bit of an electric source. Perhaps you have outlets in your house, and those outlets that you plug into, pretend those are different platform models. So when you plug into a platform model and you leverage it, you're getting the benefit of that utility, of all of that awesome generative capability, so that it can power your applications. In that electric analogy, maybe that you're powering a hair dryer or a blender or a vacuum cleaner. Those generative models can power different applications, such as word processing, creating images, even creating real-time dashboards or guiding self-driving cars, right? So that's part of this understanding, is how does the model leverage the computational power, the storage power to make our lives better? What is the difference between training a model and then simply using or plugging into a generative AI platform model? So when you think about that and the ability to create, impact, that AI capability, the ability to bring AI inside the organization, is something that not only impacts us on a daily basis, but can impact the organization, from automation to decision support, personalization, and prediction. So I want to pause here as I've outlined not only the current state of AI, but also how AI is implemented through a healthcare scenario. And I'd really love, Anudeep, for you to chime in here on some of the variables that you would think of as a technologist. What are some of the things that come to mind as you perhaps look at AI in healthcare, whether you're diagnosing or conducting surgery or personalized care, or how you're maybe collecting data and preparing that data to train a model? What are some of the things that you think of?
Hey, thanks, Brian. Thanks for your presentation and handing it over to me. So, yep. So when you're building your AI model and the AI perspective, what I would say is, so how do you consider your data sources? Say, suppose whatever you're talking about right now, if it's healthcare, so where's the data coming from? So is it structured data, unstructured data, semi-structured data? So this data, like where do you push this data into? So the data may be sitting in some system, or it may be streaming on real time. And then what you would consider is, how do you clean the data? Like, what variables would I require? Say suppose you have like hundreds of variables, like just consider a SQL table where you have 100 columns, and you don't need all the 100 columns here. So probably you only need like 6, 7 to train your data. So if you're gonna overfit the data, like if you're gonna take 20 columns and you overfit the data, so the model wouldn't be giving you the exact results. So that's why it's important to clean the data. Then how do you label the data? So say you have ingested like pictures, video. So you say, suppose there is an apple, so you would label that orange as label 2. So how does the model know that what is what? So there are some situations here where the model may not know if it's like to like, say, if it doesn't differentiate, like the color, the shape, everything is the same. So those are some issues which we need to tackle. So that's where the quality checks comes in. You have to do your type of checks. So that's where you need the talent to check this. Then comes ensuring privacy, like compliance, ethics, governance. So you would be thinking, hey, yeah, my data may be exposed to outside world. How do you govern the data? So what are the ethical values we need to follow while you are dealing with artificial intelligence and machine learning? So these are all things which, as an organization, you need to have all this documented.
Yeah, that's great. And we have a question in the chat, and I'm going to go back here to the skills slide. I think this would be best for you. Given even in this healthcare example, you mentioned skills. What's your perspective as somebody who's been in the IT space and also had a lot of hiring conversations, and you work with a lot of clients to help them get the talent that they need? What are you seeing from this new era of skills, and what are people looking for?
Yep. Yeah, let me just get to the transition, how it happened. So before 2022, the world was all against big data. So how do you predict the trends, forecasting and stuff, right? So now we are into a new era where everything is fed to a model and it's generating the output. So for now, an organization to consider a digital transformation, I would say firstly they need to know what they wanted to do with their data and what type of use cases they are planning. So it wholly depends on the organization. So a trucking industry may have its own use cases. A healthcare industry has its own use cases. So for everything, data is the main thing. So for that, we would need a good data engineer who can get all the data into a centralized location. Then we may need to have a solutions architect who can design the strategy here end to end. So how do you integrate these tools to various other tools in your organization? How can an end user use it seamlessly? Then comes an AI security guy and QA testing. So how do you secure all the pipelines, whatever you have built? How you secure the models? Say, suppose your model is deployed in cloud using Google Cloud Vertex AI. How do you secure that who access what? So when it comes to like a healthcare client, so how do you uh, adhere to the HIPAA compliance, which has been suggested by government, and how your FHIR records are in compliant with the healthcare standards? Then you would rely on AI ethics and governance guy. You have a data governance analyst available, so who can guide you through creating a document of governance rules and ethical rules, like how your AI models needs to be accessed all over your organization. So this is a sequence of skills which I provide the clients, and I have designed strategies. So this is what typically a client gets to implement an AI end-to-end model.
Yeah, thanks so much for that. And one of the things that I wrote about in my book, The AI Lead, is the idea that really you cannot have AI without comprehensive data. Like without data, AI doesn't exist. That's actually the root of it. And most organizations need to overcome what I call data drag. They need to think about what data they're ingesting, how do they clean and organize it, like we're talking about here in the healthcare example. Then they need to figure out if they're going to train their own model or they're going to use somebody else's platform model, and then what kind of decisions they need to make. How does this resonate with you as you're thinking about and actually engaging your customers? How aware are they of data drag, and what are some of the things they're having struggles with, or having success with as they try to deploy AI? What do you think, Andy Deep?
Yep. Yes. So yes, for everybody. So I have read AI Lead. So it's definitely a starting point when your organization is transforming from legacy into digital world. Like how you gonna manage data and how you gonna manage data drag here, and what is required for an organization to transform into a AI type of organization. So those things, yeah, I would definitely also ask everybody to go through the trainings provided by Digital Command, which are great in transforming the organization from legacy world into AI world.
Thanks so much for that. I appreciate that. That's great. And I think one of the things I want to outline as well is the idea of using AI. And I think, you mentioned it with the AI ethics and the governance, and I'm looking at the chat. There's a question in here about how do we ensure that our data does not become part of the training of an AI. Like if we're going to train, how do we make sure that OpenAI doesn't get our data and our private data? And this actually is a good slide that I created in case that question came up. But basically, I would say from a business perspective that we want to deploy AI in a way that leverages our data and protects our data. We need to think about the use cases, and we need to think about the decisions we need to make. We also have to recognize here that we can deploy AI in a way that protects data, because we can deploy AI in a way that actually doesn't have memory. And I'll explain that here on the next slide. But this idea that we can retrieve information from our own databases in our own environment and still use a pre-trained model like OpenAI without exposing our private data, without exposing our intellectual property or our secrets, et cetera. We can do that because AI has the ability, if we organize it and we deploy it in such a way that it won't actually memorize our stuff. And then most of the time, security is an afterthought, or it's the thing that's happening at the end. I'll say if you're going to deploy AI, you have to think about AI at the very I'm sorry, security. You have to think about security from the very beginning. And you have to think about, how do we protect this data? How do we make sure that we're monitoring and we have observability on this? How do we make sure that the decisions that we're making are protected, and the data is protected, and the AI engines are protected, and the AI algorithms are protected if we're using machine learning algorithms, and all of those things that we have to make decisions. Because if we don't think about security on the front end, we have to realize that there are threat actors, there are bad guys that have AI that can deploy and try to penetrate the system. So we want to think about, even though AI gives us flexibility and speed, we want to make sure that when we deploy AI internally, it has guardrails, it has governance, that our data is protected, that we have security and privacy, et cetera. And the way that we do that, and I'll just say that there is a technique, there is an ability to actually use these generative models, these platform models like OpenAI and Copilot and other platform models that have an API that you can use the generative models to create something and build something and output something. You can do that with your private data if you deploy it in such a way that you give real-time access, but you don't necessarily let the system memorize it. And the analogy that I use here is, if you've ever been working on your computer in a document that's not in the cloud, so it's on your computer, and you didn't save it, and you lost power and there was no battery. If you were typing on there, you would see your document, but you lost power. If you've ever lost your work, you have an example right there of how you were leveraging computer power without the ability to retrieve what happened. There was no memory and you've lost your work. So that ability to use generative AI is something that companies are deploying, where they bring that AI system online with their own private secure data, that context, and then they use the models, the platform models, to create outputs. So, Anudeep, I'd love your take on that. This is a kind of a retrieval and an augmented process that allows companies to use these platform models without exposing their intellectual property. What kind of jumps out at you from a technical perspective in companies needing to deploy this type of solution?
So firstly, I think they need to be aware of the hardware they have been choosing. So if there's a lot of data streaming in data and you're ingesting like a lot of videos, pictures, so the model you're developing may want to use more compute. So with in the clients I've been helping with, so most of them have deployed their solutions on different cloud like Google Cloud, AWS, Azure, so that they can move between the resources. So they can choose their own GPUs based on their use cases. So that's the trend I have seen. So and other AI capabilities, so once you have the hardware, then you would come up with the use cases talking to your business shareholders, see like where you can incorporate AI and how do you automate the pipelines once you have data streaming into your AI systems. Then like what models you use and what would be the end reports you would be producing and who would be the end consumers for those reports. So that may be reports going to your higher leadership, what they want to see. So recent use case which I have dealt with a trucking company is basically they wanted operational excellence in their supply chain and logistics. So those reports would go to the uh, people like the managers in warehouse where they can optimize the resources. So then your forecasting trends, your prediction forecasting trends would go to your like the finance team who would forecast the trends, like how much you are doing now and how much we would be doing based on these models. So you can also build chatbots where you can feed all your documents, like the runbooks you have, and get like a whatever questions you ask it, you get the output for that. So that's one more operational optimization you can do. So
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate that. And one of the things that I wanted to also address with you is, and I'd love your perspective on this, it's the idea that there's some misperceptions here, misconceptions about AI that I still see, and perhaps you have seen some as you've been talking to clients and customers. But one is, hey, AI is going to take our jobs, and I will say that I'm in the perspective, and I have the perspective that really for every job that is impacted in a negative way, there will be other jobs that are impacted positively. I will say that AI in its early form, it is an augmentation to so many different jobs. And there's a saying that says, you may not necessarily be replaced by AI, but you might be replaced by somebody using AI. Obviously, we are seeing some departments or job roles that are really replaced by AI, and you have to think about, well, what kind of roles and jobs are those? A lot of them are very tactical, task-based jobs. Where I'm not seeing AI replacing folks is in jobs that require creativity and synthesis. And I talk about this in the book, the idea that if you're able to connect the dots, if you're able to have emotional intelligence, if you're able to have empathy for customers, and you're able to orchestrate many different teams and systems and tools, you're not going to get replaced by AI. What the challenges that some people have is that the tasks that they do are easy to automate. And anytime you have tasks easy to automate, you could get displaced. So I will just say that not AI is not necessarily going to replace everybody's job, but there will be some shift. You're going to see jobs that go away, but I will say there will be new jobs created. There's a whole bunch of jobs that we talked about in our previous webinars that talked about the new jobs being created, such as AI ethicist, prompt engineer, the idea of and the role of a manager of agents and bots, right? So there's a lot of different roles that'll be popping up. I actually got an inbox invite today on LinkedIn. Somebody's looking for a new job, a new role that didn't exist last year. So these jobs are getting created. Another misconception is that you have to have a lot of technical expertise to do all this stuff. I will say I've seen hundreds of software tools. I've seen of them, if you will. I've actually put eyes on many different software tools that are pulling out the technical piece and kind of hiding that and making it a lot more accessible for non-technical programmers. I will say the more custom things are, the more you need a programmer. And I will also say that it's easy to prototype. It's harder to execute and deploy full AI. You will need some technical expertise to do full AI. But from a prototyping, figuring it out, or even having this conversation about the business impacts and the departmental impacts of AI, you don't have to have that technical expertise. You just need to know how AI works and how generative AI works, which is really a level playing field because it's only from our perspective in the business world 3 years old because ChatGPT came out 3 years ago. The next piece is that AI will automate everything. We won't be working much. Everything's going to be automated. I will say that, and I had this on my live show a couple weeks ago. Even though chatbots seem easy to implement in a generative AI fashion, chatbots can go awry. You still need human oversight on all this. You need to be able to have strong governance. You need to think about and test. And I will say this too. If your company is going to have a first implementation and a first pilot of generative AI, I would say don't practice on your customers. Make sure you know what you're doing before it becomes customer facing. And that means your employees should start using it before your customers. And if your employees aren't using generative AI, really you don't have any business rolling it out with your customers. So those are 3 misconceptions and how I would approach those. Anudeep, what do you think of those? And are there any others that you hear about that you'd like to talk about?
Yes, thanks for that, Brain. Yeah. So basically, yes, this has been a trend, right? So during the dot-com boom, everybody were thinking, hey, what about our jobs? And new jobs have been created. Same thing after that, we have been into big data world where all the SQL people, they thought their jobs are in danger, but slowly everything evolved and new jobs came up, and people have been keeping up with the pace. So similarly, right now, what I believe is I have been telling clients that don't blindly take away people. Try to train the people into the next level. Like say, suppose you are a Python guy, you can easily train them into a machine learning AI guy. So you have to look into the ways like how you can evolve people too. So right now, what I believe is that humans working with AI is the best. Like you optimize things. So a person who knows about AI can do their work effectively. That's what I feel right now.
Awesome. That's great. Great. Thanks for that context. All right, as we wrap up here, I'm going to take a look at the chat. The thing that I want to highlight is building out your journey to AI and enterprise AI requires some intentionality. I would say you have to be intentional. A lot of what Anudeep and I were talking about today were concepts that have been proven, but they also, people have some lessons learned and some scraped knees over, if you will. What we've learned at Digital Command is that there's a repeatable pattern for getting traction in the AI space, especially the enterprise AI space. And if you have no AI happening, there are really 5 steps. First is building an AI assistant that solves specific business problems, kind of like a right-hand bot, if you will, somebody or something that can do a specific thing. And then step 2 is rapidly prototyping to test the impact of AI before full deployment. Step 3 would be to deploy more of an adaptive AI that's using your context, that's using your data, that's using some information that you put into it, and having it tailor those answers to tailor what it generates. Step 4 would then be about bringing AI online in the enterprise, which means you need to think about security and compliance and governance first. Well, second, really, it's the business problem first. It's always a business problem. It's always about customers. That's why we do these things. But really, early on, you need to think about, if we're in this step 4 of deploying AI, how is it going to impact our systems? How do we ensure that we have continuity of operations and drive impact? And then how do we ensure that it's hardened, if you will, that threat actors cannot get in, that it has the governance, that we have the visibility, that it has the safety guardrails, that it has the ethical compliance. There's a lot to figure out in step 4. And then once you have those things piloted out and you have a little pocket going, then you can scale it in step 5. This approach really helps you realize the full potential of AI while mitigating risks. You can find out more about this approach at the AI Launchpad website, digitalcommand.co/launchpad. So with that, let me check some of the Q&A here. We have one question, Anudeep, of what if my leader ship that I'm not aware of anything going on with AI in my company? How do I bring this up, and who should I talk to? The loaded question. So that's a good question. I'll give it a shot first. I would say you definitely want to be curious about it. I will also say that many of the organizations that I've worked with have something going on. I won't say every organization, but many organizations have something going on, and employees may not know about it. There's a lot of testing and piloting happening. Obviously, there's a lot of hype, and organizations want to roll out many different things, but tech teams know that they can't just go to full scale right away. So while you may not be aware of it happening, doesn't mean it's not happening, one. And then two, if it is happening and you are not involved, just be curious. And then I would say be ready. What does it mean to be ready? Well, you should understand how AI works. You should understand and think through how AI impacts your role. One of the team members that I have encourages you to actually take your current job description and work with an AI bot to think about how your current job description can be deconstructed and AI-ified. Well, how would your job change? Your current job description, use that. How would AI impact that current job description? And then start working backwards from that, taking the courses, go to Digital Command and take those courses, engage in the purple collar community, etc. So be curious and be ready. That would be my 2 or 3 comments there. Anudeep, what thoughts do you have about how do people find out what's going on and how do they bring this up internally?
So usually the discussions I would have with the client is so CDO or CTO, like who oversee the data strategy, governance, and how the company needs to go. So those people will have to take the call. So they are also responsible for data quality, AI readiness, and how the models are deployed, because they can convey to the lower hierarchy. So for that, we need, I even discuss with them like data-driven AI solutions, like predictive analytics, like how your company needs to do. Because say suppose I'll just take an example. You're taking Walmart. So I would go to Walmart CDO, Chief Data Officer, and say, hey, Amazon has already implemented these predictive analytics and these AI models. So you are way backwards. So why don't you get it? So then there is a discussion on like what hardware is needed, then what use cases we have to go, and then comes the cost budgeting, and then comes like who is responsible for what, like what type of talent I need. So these are some things, guys, which I myself would go to a client and discuss with them.
Yeah, great feedback. All right. So as we wind this down, two things for you. Thank you for attending. And also, I want to give you this guide. So if you go to digitalcommand.co/AI hyphen guide, there's a free download there. You can get a copy of the Beginner's Guide to AI Tools. It's an impactful ebook that gives you an overview of very important tools that are in most environments today about how you can use AI in the enterprise for improving your productivity. So I want to give you that as a free gift for attending. Go to digitalcommand.co/AI hyphen guide. And I also want to invite you to attend other webinars. You can find out on our webinars page. Actually, Anudeep and I are teaming up next month to talk about very practical and specific AI use cases. I've learned and what was important for us, and we were talking about when we were planning this, is using stories, using examples, using AI use cases. And we're going to have a whole webinar on that topic, where we'll rapid fire some ways in which enterprise AI is rolling out. Also, you can check out my book, AIleadbook.com. Anywhere books are sold. It became a bestseller on Amazon. It became a hot new release in 3 AI categories on Amazon. I'm very grateful for that. And I really want you to explore that book, because I think it's one of those foundational texts for enterprise AI. And then you can find out all of this on our resources page. So I appreciate your joining today on behalf of Anudeep and all of the Digital Command team. We hope to see you on a future webinar. And also, don't forget to tune in to the AI Lead Show every Friday at brianlambert.live, where we talk about these topics and more with a panel of experts and people actually doing AI. I hope to see you at a future show and a future webinar. Take care. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.